I'm Tamar Westphal. I am 23 and I'm from Chicago. I like sequins. I like purple things, as you can tell. I like talking about politics. Yes, yelling about politics. Cute animals. Long walks on the beach. Very strong rum drinks. I love theater. I was a musical theater, self-designed musical theater major here and a gender studies minor, focusing specifically on queer theory and LGBTQ plus history. Yeah, so really I think most of the things that I love in my life come back to issues of theater and performance art and how that intersects with queer politics. So I'm now 2 years out of Mount Holyoke, and I would say that I started identifying as femme during my senior year. So like since like 2011, 2012. For me, it was a very circuitous path to start identifying that way, because when I came to Mount Holyoke, first of all, I was just sort of starting to come into my queerness, and so that, like, I was just trying to figure out how I identified my sexuality, and then beyond that, like, what did that mean in terms of, like, how I wanted to present my gender, and I was very hesitant to identify as femme. In fact, like, I really stayed away from that, because unfortunately the way that I was introduced to the concept of femme was in this really limited way. And the message that I got was, first of all, that like femme exists only in opposition to butch, and that it's like it is this mandated dichotomy. And that femme is this teeny tiny little box, and like femme is just limited and like only caretaking and passivity and like decoration. But the idea that femme could only be this like tiny little contained box really bothered me. And since that's the only message that I was getting about femme, I was like, well, that's totally not for me. Like, I'm not even gonna use the word femme. Like, that's so not what I identify with at all. And it was only later on in my college career that I really started seeking out more discussions about femininity, and I wasn't really finding those on campus, and so I was looking online. Tumblr was terrific, and I was trying to find out what type of language people were using to talk about being feminine and queer, and through that I found a number of really diverse representations of femme that were so much more expansive, and people were doing femme in all sorts of different ways, and through that I was like, oh, this is like actually fantastic, and I identify with so much of this, and I wish that I had found this earlier because it actually rings so true for me. Okay, femme. This is a difficult question, and it's different for everyone. So for me, femme is about embodying an unapologetic femininity. I could go on at length about how we live in a patriarchal society, and so femininity is considered lesser. I'm not gonna defend that assertion. Like, that's real. Femininity is often looked down upon. It's seen as superficial or weak or like, yeah, just not real in so many ways and not valuable. So for me, femme is very much about being overtly feminine, even not just through the way that I dress, but in terms of my mannerisms, my body language, and the character traits that I value in terms of community caretaking and supporting one's community and really engaging with people. Those are often seen as more feminine traits and therefore not always so valuable. But those are things that I really prize, and so for me, femme is very much about not only what I look like, but also my political outlook and my community values. And it's about a strong femininity, but it's not only about strength. I think often I've been in conversations about what femme means, and the go-to phrase is like, it's about strong femininity. But I want to make sure that there's also space for weakness and for quietness and for reticence, and not always being loud in your face, because that's not the only thing that femme looks like. So, Femme Powered is a group that I instigated my senior year, so very early on in 2012. But the idea had been percolating before that, and there were two taboo dialogues that I had co-facilitated. One during my sophomore year, in which we didn't use the word femme at all. It was only about, like, what does it mean to be feminine and queer? Because, again, I was, like, not into talking about, like, I wasn't identifying as femme at that point, and I really didn't know how to talk about that. But my senior year, in the fall, I and a friend facilitated a dialogue that we just called Femme, and there really wasn't space, I felt, for conversations about femme. It was very easy to walk around campus and just, like, stumble into conversations about masculinity, which in a way is a beautiful thing and something that I definitely value about this campus, but there wasn't a conversation I saw publicly happening about femininity. And so I really wanted to create a space in which that would happen. And so my friend and I facilitated this taboo dialogue about femme. And what I was so amazed to discover is that once we, like, put it out there that we were going to talk about femme, all these people came out of the woodwork, and so many people showed up and were having similar experiences or had similar questions to my questions. And so this dialogue was excellent, and at the end we realized that there was so much interest in continuing the conversation, and so I just took down a list of email addresses and said to people, you know, if you would like to just come to a casual discussion group and, like, maybe have dinner or, like, hang out in a common room and talk about what femme means and keep this conversation going, give me your email address and we'll get together. And that, over the next couple months, evolved into the student org Femme Powered, which is all about supporting and affirming femme identities. And also, it's not just for femmes, it is for people who want to learn about what femme is, or what does femme mean, and what are femme issues, and, you know, how do I make sense of my gender and your gender, and yeah, it's a space to have those conversations, and also to create change on campus around the queer climate. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited that we're here. We are in the Jeanette Marks house, which is one of 5 cultural houses on campus. And look up Jeanette Marks because she's fantastic and totally part of Mount Holyoke's queer history. This space, okay, so it's the LGBTQ plus cultural center, and we're in the library right now, which is one of my favorite spots on campus, if not my absolute favorite. There is so much history of Mount Holyoke and of queer movements all over the place in this room, and it also has this chair, which is so comfy. I'm not just saying that, I literally wanted to be here to sit in this chair because this spot feels like home to me on campus. Speaking from my own experience as a queer woman, there is this idea that femmes are secretly straight, and that is in many cases wrong, and it's also hurtful, especially when it comes from members of our own community, because that speaks to a very deep mistrust of femmes, and that more than bothers me. There are also a number of misconceptions about femme in terms of how it would correlate to the type of relationships that you have, if you have relationships, the type of sex that you have, if you have sex, and like overall attitude, and like that's false. I mean, there are femme people who have all sorts of different personalities and different sexual interests and different romantic interests. Yeah, there are a lot of weird and I think like outdated ideas about how femme means that you are passive and you like only date butch identified people and like you only have like this type of sex. And like certainly like femmes date butches and femmes date all sorts of other people and femmes like don't date or whatever, you know, there are so many different permutations of femme. Okay, well, so first of all, I totally dig this blazer, which is why I wore it today. This is, yeah, femme. I should have said that, like, for me, femme is, like, very much an over-the-top femininity. So, like, when I do something professional, like, I'll wear a blazer, but, like, it's gonna be bright purple. So I'm very into this. I also have this really fantastic pair of, like, scarlet stiletto boots. They're, like, ankle boots with like 4-inch heels and they're covered in gold buckles and like I got them, I thrifted them and it was like the best freaking $7 I have ever spent. They're amazing and I'm really excited for the snow to be gone so I can wear them every day. Well, there was a period at the end of my sophomore year of college when I really should have gotten a haircut and I didn't because I was like, finals, I don't care, like whatever, I'm just gonna keep growing it. That was a really bad decision because now all my pictures with my friends who were graduating that year like have me with this terrible, terrible hairdo. So, but I'm gonna like plead finals busyness on that and excuse myself.